Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Throne of Steel Part 182 based on novel. So let's start. Yu Yi pondered the request for a whole quarter of an hour before raising her head once more. She looked at Long Houchen and said suddenly, "I can tell you, but I can only tell you. And, you must promise that only you will know. You aren't allowed to tell anyone else, including your best friends, even your wife." As she said that, she tossed a challenging glance to Kia. Kia looked back at her calmly. She did not mind at all. "All right, I agree." Long Houchen nodded without too much thought. The identity of the leader of Yu Yi's organization was extremely important to him. It would relate to his next arrangements. Yu Yi slowly made her way to Long Houchen. This time, Yang Wenjiao did not stop her. She arrived 3 meters away from Long Houchen and she actually continued forwards. Long Houchen could not help but frown. "You should be able to tell me by sound transmission from this distance." Yu Yi shook her head. "The matter's too important. Your companions are all powerful, so I'm afraid of them eavesdropping." As she said that, she had already arrived by Long Houchen's side. She moved towards his ear. Although Long Houchen felt rather awkward, the matter was important, so he could not afford to be bothered by other factors now. Her breath smelled like orchids while her body gave off a faint fragrance. Perhaps due to traveling at her full speed, her fragrance was heavier than before. Long Houchen jerked back slightly, but Yu Yi would immediately catch up. She would use her hands to grab his arm and pull him lower. She whispered something gently in his ear. "What? It's actually him?" Long Houchen was completely taken aback by what Yu Yi had told him. It was also in that moment that Yu Yi gently kissed his earlobe, before quickly retreating. She moved very quickly, but how was it possible for Kia to miss that, as she had always been paying attention to the two of them? She immediately fell into a rage. Yu Yi retreated to 10 meters away and said to Kia, "Oh, what? His life is already yours, so what if I kiss him? I like him." Kia's face immediately sank. Her sharp glare made Yu Yi's heart tighten and instinctively take a few more steps backwards. She could clearly sense the powerful killing intent Kia was giving off. Long Houchen recovered from his shock now. His earlobe felt numb. He was unable to describe the feeling. However, he was in no mood to feel awkward, because the answer Yu Yi had told him was just too shocking. He wrapped his arm around Kia's thin waist very naturally and said to Yu Yi, "You can go now. From now onwards, we are working together with full cooperation. What I need first is for your organization to provide me with information, not just information from your side, but also a constant flow of accurate information about the demon army's offense on the Myriad Beasts Mountain Pass and Northeastern Fort. My promise from back then will hold. If we defeat the demons, then we will definitely give your organization territory by the sea as a place of residing, as well as 500 years of autonomy. With so much time, it should be plenty for you to completely assimilate into the humans." Yu Yi smiled. "You believe me now, but why should I believe you will hold your promise?" Kia could not help herself back anymore. She shouted, "Houchen's word is worth more than 1,000 bars of gold. Has he ever broken it?" Yu Yi ignored her. She only looked at Long Houchen. Long Houchen asked sternly, "What do you want?" Yu Yi smiled. "It's very simple." She pointed at her cheek and said, "Kiss me and I'll believe you." Fury rose up in Kia and she was just about to burst out in anger, but Long Houchen grabbed her firmly. Normally, Kia was very calm. However, Yu Yi's provocation today had crossed her bottom line. Although she completely believed in Long Houchen, Yu Yi was just as pretty as her, and her extreme teasing of Long Houchen had made her especially furious. Long Houchen held Kia firmly and his gaze coldened. He said seriously, "You can go. That's the end of our cooperation." Yu Yi was surprised. "You'd actually abandon the future of the Temple Union for her? You aren't a qualified leader." Long Houchen said indifferently, "For Kia, I'm even willing to abandon my beliefs. Not to mention, is your organization crucial for us to oppose the demon god emperor? If we work together, then we both benefit, But if we don't, you have no promise either. If you choose a path of destruction, I have no reason to stop you. Kia's rigid body finally softened up. She lowered her slightly and glanced at Long Houchen slightly apologetically. She seemed like an indignated wife. She was no longer as furious as before. A sliver of disappointment clearly appeared in the bottom of Yu Yi's eyes, but her smile remained the same. Okay then, I get it, you value your ties with others over everything else. Aren't I just joking? I'll just believe your sincerity. I have to head back immediately. Afterwards, our people will remain in contact with you. Be careful of Arbao. His strength is nothing like before. And I heard the demon god emperor has given him a few powerful pieces of equipment as well. With that, she turned around and drifted away. She disappeared below a ridge beside the clearing in the mountains. However, what no one saw was how tears had already pooled up in Yu Yi's eyes when she left them. Kia whispered in Long Houchen's ear, "Sorry, I shouldn't have." Long Houchen held her hand tightly. "Why are you apologizing?" The two smiled at each other and everything dissipated, only feeding their feelings for each other. Xu Yongxiao rolled her eyes at Long Houchen. She sneered, "Little Long, there are many temptations in the world and you hold a lofty position as well. You better guard your heart. Kia, you need to watch him well." Kia blushed and said, "I believe in him." Long Houchen cleared his throat. "The information Yu Yi's brought has been very timely. We have to rearrange our plans. Since Arbao is leading a vanguard over, let's give him a frontal attack. The demon god emperor has clearly sent him as the vanguard to locate us. We won't be able to avoid this fight. We have to give Han Yu and the others plenty of time to retreat." Xiao Hua said, "The demon god emperor has come this time with great hostility. He's brought all of the strongest elites among the demon race. That's over 200 powerhouses of the 9th step. With our current strength, it's very difficult for us to fend them off. Should we send our companions back to the dragon-resisting mountain pass?" Long Houchen shook his head. "We can't. The demon army's attacks on the Myriad Beasts mountain pass and northeastern fort hasn't been confirmed yet, so we can't throw ourselves into disorder first. Let's deal with Arbao's vanguard first, and then we have to clash with the demon god emperor slightly. Only by realizing the actually difference between me and the demon god emperor can we decide the future plans with greater confidence." He did not go into detail, but Xiao Hua could tell that Long Houchen had already made up his mind, so Xiao Hua did not ask about anything else. He only nodded and said, "We can only take on step at a time and see now." Arbao. A cold light flashed through Long Houchen's eyes. He had fought with Arbao a total of 2 times. He remembered the second time especially well. It was just when Caia was undergoing her awakening as the one chosen by the god of death. Because of Arbao's attack, Caia had almost become injured and he himself had become heavily wounded. If it were not for Yi Xiaolei, who knew what would have happened in the end? This time would clearly be different from last time. A black figure shot through the air as blurs. Due to traveling too quickly, blurs would still remain in the air 1,000 meters behind his body. Arbao squinted his eyes slightly as his chest burned. 5 years. It had already been 5 long years. He had waited for this day for far too long. He had already forgotten the demon god emperor's warning. The only thing he wanted to do right now was clash with Long Houchen. He wanted to prove that he was stronger and more outstanding than Long Houchen. The shame from his past defeat under Long Houchen's hands was not the only thing in his heart. He also blamed Long Houchen for Yu Yi breaking off her engagement with him. In other words, Long Houchen was basically Arbao's most important opponent in his life. If he did not defeat Long Houchen, he would never be able to overcome this matter. A black figure suddenly flew over from ahead towards Arbao's group. "Crown Prince." When they met, the black figure suddenly stopped and traveled backwards, joining Arbao's group. He did not make the group slow down at all. "Is there news?" Arbao asked coldly. The black figure was a large man in black clothes. Below his thick eyebrows were a pair of purplish black pupils. He seemed like he was in his 40s. His skin complexion was dark as his face seemed vicious. Compared to the Moon Demon clan, the Devil Dragons were much more powerful, but in terms of appearance, they were not as graceful as the Moon Demons. According to the information we've received, the Skynet city of the Skynet province was attacked just 6 hours ago. The capital's been heavily destroyed with their grain silos burned to the ground. Many resources have been cleaned out. I continued to follow them, and around 10,000 people of the human army are moving northward. They are traveling very quickly. It seems like they've anticipated our arrival and have begun their retreat. Vicious light flickered in Arbao's eyes. He waved his hand and ordered sternly, "Lead the way. Pursue them." "I've found them." Arbao clenched his fist firmly as cold light shone in his eyes. With a target identified, he felt like Long Houchen was only inches away now. After 5 years of waiting, they were finally going to face each other. Arbao experienced some nervousness within his excitement, but his confidence in himself did not waver at all. Confidence was crucial to victory. If he had developed fear before the battle, then he had already lost half of it. The sky had already darkened slightly now. The sunset left behind a faint, red color in the sky as the residual glow from the setting sun seemed warm and gentle. It formed quite the contrast to the vicious thoughts in Arbao's head. Long Houchen. The name constantly resounded through Arbao's head. Under his lead, the 20 devil dragons sped up. They traveled northward in pursuit. The 20 devil dragons all seemed to be in their 30s or 40s. Their expressions were cold and most of their appearance was vicious. However, all of them exuded with a sense of power. They were all members of the Imperial Black Dragon Guard, as well as the central force of the Devil Dragons. This time, the Demon God Emperor had mobilized the entire Devil Dragon clan to deal with Long Houchen. Perhaps due to being overly powerful, there were difficulties with reproduction among the Devil Dragon clan. They only had a little over 100 clansmen. Once the old and young were subtracted, there were only around 80 adult devil dragons. However, their lifespans were extremely long, able to live up to 1,000 years. As a result, they remained in their prime for a very long time as well. They did not have a lot of members, but every single adult devil dragon was a powerhouse of the 9th step. They could all assume human form. Coupled with their natural physical strength as devil dragons, their external spiritual energy also surpassed 100,000. On the battlefield, the Demon God Emperor's Imperial Black Dragon Guard was a symbol of invincibility. Suddenly, Arbao felt his heart seemingly skip a beat. It was a very strange feeling. He instinctively slowed down and the Black Dragon Guard slowed down as well. "Your Highness," the leader of the Black Dragon Guard, Huang Shuo, called out in some surprise. The Demon God Emperor understood his son very well. Although Arbao became more and more level-headed as he grew older, the operation this time involved Long Houchen, so it was difficult to say what Arbao would end up doing. As a result, the Demon God Emperor specially sent Huang Shuo to accompany Arbao. Not only was it because of Huang Shuo's powerful cultivation, but more importantly, it was because of his level-headedness. With his assistance, they should have been able to adapt to any situation. Arbao said sternly, "My heart beats unnatural." Huang Shuo was surprised. Arbao had inherited the imperial bloodline of the Devil Dragons. Since something had happened to his heartbeat, it would be a warning. "Stop." Huang Shuo raised his hand and slowed down with Arbao. The Devil Dragons behind them slowed down as well, coming to a halt. Arbao squinted his eyes as he expanded his mental force as much as he could, pushing his senses to the limit. As his mental force expanded, he studied the surroundings. He was in a hurry to fight with Long Houchen, but he was still the future successor of the Demon God Emperor after all. He possessed natural leadership and intelligence. The warning from his heartbeat had also woken him up from his own world in his mind. Huang Shuo arrived behind Arbao and pressed his right hand on his back. Immediately, two powerful mental pulses fused towards and spread even further away. However, they still failed to sense anything. "Is there something wrong with me senses?" Arbao looked at Huang Shuo in some doubt. Huang Shuo said sternly, "It's still better if we're careful. Everyone remain alert." It was also at this moment that a black streak of light silently appeared behind the Black Dragon Guard. It had emerged from nowhere. It vanished with a flash, directly stabbing into the back of the last devil dragon's head. If it were a regular powerhouse of the 9th step, they would probably die without even being able to make a sound. However, the devil dragons were the greatest clan among the demons after all. In the moment the back of his head was stabbed, the devil dragon let out a howl. As he lunged forward, powers of darkness erupted completely. The black light vanished with a flash, disappearing in the air again, like it had never appeared in the first place. The sudden change in the situation made the atmosphere extremely nervous. All of the black dragon guards reacted immediately, quickly forming a circle around Arbao and the devil dragon that was attacked with their backs to the center. At the same time, dense auras of darkness surged about, immediately turning a range of several hundred meters into darkness. Even the slightest pulse of space would not be able to avoid being sensed by their aura of darkness. Huang Shuo had already grabbed the devil dragon who was attacked. Although the devil dragon had counterattacked the moment he was struck, the opponent's attack was just too powerful. He had been stabbed on the back of his head, above his neck. The head of a devil dragon was the toughest part of their body. Only the bone behind their necks was slightly thinner. The enemy clearly knew about this, which was why they had chosen to attack there. Huang Shuo managed to feel that the strike had completely penetrated the devil dragon's head just from a slight touch. Sticky killing intent remained by the edge of the wound. Blood did not even flow out. The clansman's done for. Huang Shuo's expression became extremely ugly. He only had a few dozen Imperial guards under his command. Every single one of them was a direct descendant and a true powerhouse. He had just lost one of them without knowing why. It would only be strange if he was in a good mood. When did the humans possess such a powerful assassin? Cold light flashed through Arbao's eyes, but he did not become angered. He still gave off a cold presence. Earlier, he and Huang Shuo had already checked their surroundings to the best of their ability, but the enemy still lurked nearby without being discovered. That only explained just how terrifyingly strong this assassin was. If he had not stopped in time and become surrounded by the Black Dragon Guard, the strike earlier might have landed on him instead. Could he have dodged it? Arbao was actually unable to answer that question. Purplish dark light began to rise from his chest, and afterwards, a layer of thick scales began to spread from there, covering his body in the blink of an eye. The other Imperial guards did the same. However, Arbao's scales seemed much thicker than the others. A pair of long horns curled out from his head and his aura strengthened drastically. The assassin should be at the 5th rank of the 9th step at the very least to be able to launch a fatal strike at such a close distance and retreat without being discovered. However, since when did the humans have an assassin at the 5th rank of the 9th step? Huang Shuo asked sternly. Due to his fury, his hands had always been trembling. A clansman had died. That was 1/100th of the devil dragon's forces. What would the demon god emperor think about him with that loss? Arbao said, now's not the time to analyze what kind of powerhouses the humans have. The enemies already appeared. Everyone be careful. Now, his nervousness had actually decreased slightly. With so many Imperial guards alert, even the demon god emperor would not be able to approach them without being discovered. And, after releasing his natural dragon armor, his defenses had increased drastically. The natural dragon armor could rival epic tier armor from humans. It was the devil dragon's most powerful defense. Huang Shuo placed the corpse of his clansman into a storage device first, before saying sternly, the assassins already left. They've retreated after a single strike. It was an instant kill. What an impressive assassin. Your Highness, we might be in trouble. I'd advise us to reorganize here and wait for His Majesty's army to arrive. Otherwise, we'll be forced to remain alert the entire time we travel. Once the enemies get a chance, they will definitely use it to launch an attack. Arbao shook his head. No, we're the Vanguard. It doesn't matter if we don't stop Long Houchen, but if we can't even understand their movements completely, is there a point to having us as a Vanguard? Everyone remain alert and be careful. Let's keep going. Huang Shuo understood that it was rather unlikely for him to be able to persuade Arbao right now. However, a clansman had already died, and if the assassin appeared again and killed another clansman or two, the the demon god emperor would definitely be furious. Seeing Huang Shuo's hesitation, Bao frowned. "Commander Huang, you afraid?" Anger flashed through Huang Shuo's eyes. "Of course not. However, every single clansman is the most valuable treasure to His Majesty and your future, Your Highness. I don't wish to see them take any risks." Bao snorted coldly. "I understand. The assassin hidden in the shadows is very dangerous. However, if we cower because of this, we'll only dance to their tune. If I've guessed correctly, Long Haochen's left the assassin here to delay our pursuit, so his subordinates can escape. Their attacks have already reached the Skynet province, but he's been fighting for the past few days. His army must be exhausted already. We can't let go of this opportunity. And the assassin's already killed one of our clansmen. Only by continuing our advance can we lure him out and avenge our clansmen." Huang Shuo frowned. "My advice stands the same." Bao said forcefully, "Your responsibility is to assist me. Don't forget it. I'm the commander of the Vanguard. Let's keep going. Maintain your natural dragon armor." As he said that, he left the encirclement with a flash and continued flying forwards. Although Huang Shuo disagreed with Bao, he could only lead the Imperial Black Dragon Guard with him when he saw how Bao kept going. Suddenly, Bao suddenly stopped despite only setting off earlier. He looked in front. Huang Shuo saw him stop and thought he had sensed the assassin again. He hurried to his side and also released pitch-black light, turning Bao and his surroundings into something akin to a black hole. This was Huang Shuo's domain. Bao had not been attacked, but his gaze was fixated in a certain direction. Huang Shuo followed his gaze and his eyes immediately narrowed. In the distance, a white speck hovered in the air quietly. It only appeared to be a white speck at first glance, but at a closer glance, it was a human. It was a human who sat on a chair. Before Huang Shuo could say anything, Bao had already unleashed a deep blow. In the next moment, purplish black light surged from his back and he basically crossed several thousand meters in a single moment. The figure that hovered in the air drew closer and closer. He wore a set of comfortable clothing as his handsome appearance even rivaled the moon demon god Aga's. His hands rested on the arms of his huge throne. Under his left hand was a dragon's head, while under his right was a 12-winged angel. White light completely enveloped him and the giant throne, just like they were a ball of light. "I've been waiting a very long time for you." Long Haochen looked at Bao approach him as he smiled. He did not speak loudly, but every single Imperial Guard heard it clearly. Bao stopped 200 meters away from Long Haochen. His calmness from before had completely vanished. He clenched his fists to the point where they crackled. His muscles and skeleton frame seemed like they were about to expand. "It's been 5 years since we last met. Have you been well, Your Highness?" Long Haochen sat on the divine throne of eternity and creation. He showed no intention of getting up. "Well? I've been very well, all thanks to you." Bao's voice was serious and cold. Purplish black light constantly gathered behind his back and surging in the shape of a fan. This was his powerful fighting intent. Long Haochen smiled indifferently. "I understand that you were unwilling to accept your loss back then. Today, I will make you convinced with your loss." Bao said coldly, "I don't understand why Father treats you with so much importance. However, I do believe that if I return with your corpse, he will be very happy." Long Haochen said, "The demon god emperor's already killed me once. If you really do have the ability, then please attempt so." Purple light lit up in Bao's eyes. Just when he was about to launch an attack, Huang Shuo stood in his way. "Move," Bao roared out. Huang Shuo said sternly, "Your Highness, he's definitely not the only one here. Don't fall for this. We still don't know where the hidden assassin is. We have to handle this carefully. His Majesty has mentioned that we don't have to engage in a battle at full power if we encounter Long Haochen. We just need to keep him busy and our mission will be complete." "Move," Bao's cold voice rang out once more. This time, he gave off a terrifying pressure while the purplish dark light on his back condensed into a huge, purplish black dragon head. Huang Shuo's expression changed drastically and he instinctively dodged to one side. Ah Bao did not charge towards Long Haochen immediately. He stared at the person he had deemed as his greater opponent in his life and said sternly, "Long Haochen, it's been 5 years. We've met once again today. I do know that your bright glimmer of hope must be nearby. However, this is a battle between you and me. Are you bold enough to accept me challenge?" Long Haochen finally stood up from the divine throne of eternity and creation. He looked at Ah Bao and nodded seriously. "You're right. This is our battle. 1 against 1. 1 against 1, Ah Bao roared out and his body immediately swelled. In the blink of an eye, he had reached over 3 meters tall. As his body grew in size, the natural dragon armor on his rapidly grew as well. Purplish-black spikes extended from his joints as the 2 horns on his head gained circular ridges. A purplish-red ring of light appeared below Ah Bao. His aura immediately shot to his peak as the powerful pressure forced the Black Demon Guard to retreat by several dozen meters instinctively. They feared Ah Bao's aura as a member of the Imperial clan of the Devil Dragons the most. It was also at this moment that figures appeared once after another in different locations. They were all 1,000 meters away from here, totaling to 9 people. They surrounded the place in a circle. Huang Shuo saw Caia who wielded the sickle of the god of death with a single glance. Was it her? Was the assassin earlier her? As the commander of the Imperial Black Dragon Guard, not only was Huang Shuo the Demon God Emperor's most trusted clansman, he was also the strongest powerhouse within the Imperial Guards. His senses were similarly powerful. With just a glance around the surroundings, he immediately sensed who was the strongest out of the bright glimmer of hope. Kia's cultivation was clearly no weaker than his. It was very likely for her to have broken through to the 5th rank of the 9th step, while she also happened to be an assassin. 2 against 1. "Do it," Huang Shuo bellowed, giving the orders to attack. The bright glimmer of hope had grown in size, but this instead made Huang Shuo relax. The upper echelon of the demons already knew about Long Haochen and his bright glimmer of hope's performance at the temple's great gathering. That was why the bright glimmer of hope had been deemed their most powerful enemies, so Huang Shuo obviously knew about them. Now that the bright glimmer of hope had all appeared and Long Haochen had expressed he could fight the Crown Prince alone, he obviously would not let this opportunity slip to deal with the bright glimmer of hope. However, just in case, he himself did not fight, watching over Ah Bao nearby. The 18 Imperial Guards turned into 18 streaks of black light and shot off in 9 different directions. They moved like lightning. As they flew, they also swelled in size and all of them now wielded a weapon in their hands. It was all epic tier equipment of the darkness element. The 9 members of the bright glimmer of hope basically all chose to turn around and flee without any hesitation, immediately pulling away from Long Haochen. Huang Shuo's heart suddenly lurched. Was this thinning their forces so they could be defeated easier? However, the dragon-resisting mountain pass only had a few divine knights that could pose a threat to them aside from Long Haochen's squad, and that was only when they were paired once against one. However, would they come here? No, they definitely would not. The Night Temple would definitely keep its divine knights to watch over the fort. Huang Shuo's level-headedness made him change the order. He ordered all of the Imperial Guards to pursue their opponents only to a certain range, to not exceed 50 kilometers away. Once they encountered any powerful enemies, they were to immediately signal for reinforcements. Just when he arranged this, Huang Shuo suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He basically charged forwards without any hesitation at all while quickly turning around. He lifted his right hand and an ink-black blade slashed down behind him, like it could cut through air. A speck of black light appeared in the air silently as well, landing perfectly on the edge of his black. Ding! With that, Huang Shuo felt like he had been struck by lightning. His entire body quivered. He only felt an icy-cold aura enter his body through his weapon. Even though his blade was a treasure and filtered away most of the aura, the coldness still reached his body, before immediately erupted. Killing intent. Could this assassin force killing intent into my body? When Huang Shuo paled in fright, he released his domain as well. As the greatest powerhouse of the Imperial Black Dragon Guards, his control over his domain was outstanding. He did not let his domain expand, instead forming a black barrier around him. The black barrier was like an eggshell made of black crystal, guarding Huang Shuo. However, after the speck of black light had launched the attack, it vanished into the air quietly once more. Huang Shuo's forehead became covered in perspiration. It was not Kia. The assassin just then definitely was not Kia who had led his clansman away, but it was definitely the one who had killed his clansman instantly. Her assassination was just too terrifying. If Huang Shuo had not charged forward immediately out of pure reflex, the sneak attack would have succeeded. But even with that being the case, the cold killing intent continued to wreak havoc in his body, not just originating from his blade, but also from the back of his head. Only after he had expanded his domain did he feel a cold sensation from the back of his head. Clearly, he would have been dead for sure if he was just slightly slower. What terrified him the most was the assassin's mysteriousness. They would never stay put after a single strike, without launching continuous attacks and instead seemingly vanishing into thin air. He was unable to sense the assassin's location at all. How could he not be on edge against an opponent like that? In that moment, he could no longer care about his 18 clansmen. He concentrated on sensing everything that went on around him and constantly moved about, afraid the assassin would launch another attack. No matter what, his life was most important at the end of the day. Long Haochen and Arbao's battle had unfolded long before Huang Shuo had been attacked. A huge, purple sword appeared in Arbao's hand. His sword seemed extremely special because the light it shone with changed in gradient, a kind that Long Haochen had never seen. It was purple that changed in gradient. It would not have been that obvious if the gradient of purple grew lighter the further out it was. However, it was the exact opposite. The color of the sword grew deeper towards the end, which made it stand out. At the same time, it made it seem stunning. The purple sword produced a streak of beautiful in the light, before vanishing in the next instant. Arbao had already appeared behind Long Haochen. Only then did a string of clangs ring out in the air. What speed! Long Haochen was surprised. With Yu Yi's warning, he had already assumed Arbao to be very powerful, but he had never thought that Arbao would reach such a level in strength. In the moment Arbao had moved with a flash, green light had already emerged from Long Haochen's chest. The green light directly drew Long Haochen's divine snail shield of sun and moon in front of his body, which was why he could block Arbao's attack. Otherwise, Long Haochen would have suffered slightly from the strike even if he could block it, having been caught by surprise. The aura of the divine throne of eternity and creation immediately erupted, forcing Arbao to a halt when he was about to launch another attack. Afterwards, he saw 13 balls of light immediately fuse with Long Haochen. Clad in the armor of eternity, a sword of eternity had appeared in Long Haochen's hand. 3 balls of light slowly revolved around him. The dragon's head and 12-winged angel both lit up, as if they were glaring at Arbao. Is this the divine throne of eternity and creation? Arbao asked coldly. Long Haochen nodded. Looks like you really have improved drastically from a few years ago. If I've checked correctly, your cultivation's already reached the 4th rank of the 9th step. And, your body's also at the 4th rank of the 9th step. Only you devil dragons can achieve something like that. Currently, Long Haochen did not find the 4th rank of the 9th step internal spiritual energy terrifying. He found the 4th rank of the 9th step external spiritual energy to be terrifying. Arbao's terrifying speed earlier did not come from his internal spiritual energy, but from his physical abilities. Are you afraid? Arbao said coldly. Long Haochen smiled. Why don't you try it and you'll know. As he said that, his body suddenly became rather illusory. Arbao shifted his body instinctively. The purplish-red rings of light under his feet suddenly lit up, turning his natural dragon armor the same color. He extended his purple sword and 2 of him actually appeared to his side. They seemed exactly the same as him. Clones? They seemed rather similar to Zhong Fangfang's spiritual stove of second life. The 3 Arbaos flashed at the same time, but they launched attacks from different directions at Long Haochen. They worked together and formed a triangle, directly charging towards Long Haochen. The 3 purplish swords were lifted high over their heads at the same time, but only the central sword had a gradient in color. Clearly, Arbao did not plan on hiding his body from Long Houchen. Ding! With the Sword of Eternity raised, it blocked the three huge purplish swords and only produced a sound. The dense aura of life suddenly emerged from Long Houchen's body. Afterwards, his Sword of Eternity turned green and erupted with green light which swept towards the three Arbaos. In that moment, Arbao felt like he had been sucked into a huge, green waterfall. The unstoppable feeling immediately shocked him. Just like how Long Houchen had underestimated him, he had underestimated Long Houchen as well. Nature's bloom. Out of the three balls of light that revolved around Long Houchen, the green ball of light had already fused into the Sword of Eternity. Deep, green light remained in the air for 5 whole seconds before gradually fading away. Arbao appeared 300 meters away from Long Houchen. He seemed to be in quite a mess. His two clones had already vanished, while his natural dragon armor was crisscrossed with wounds. There were at least 20 or so burns. "You're not my opponent." Long Houchen raised his head slightly and looked down on his opponent. Arbao snorted coldly, "That's too early for you to say. Do you think you can harm me with attacks like that?" As he said that, the rings of purplish-red light lit up below his feet once more. When his natural dragon armor turned purplish-red, the marks on his armor completely vanished. "What a strange domain," Long Houchen smiled. He did not seem to be in a hurry at all. He did not take the initiative to launch an attack. This time, the purplish-red light did not fade away. Arbao's eyes gradually turned into the same color, while his dragon wings slowly unfurled on his back. The sky behind him actually became the same purplish-red hue. Afterwards, a great pressure expanded from the purplish-red color, rushing towards Long Houchen. He was actually pushed 1,000 meters away by this pressure. The divine throne of eternity and creation released a layer of white light that was an inch thick automatically, protecting Long Houchen from the pressure. Nearby, 100 meters behind Huang Shuo, a pitch-black figure flashed. She had actually been forced out of the space there by the pressure. Although she immediately fled into the distance and hid herself again, it was more than enough to demonstrate how terrifying the pressure was. "A supra-divine tool?" Long Houchen exclaimed. Arbao really did bring him a surprise again. The purplish-red light in Arbao's eyes burned like flames. Right behind him in the pitch-black space, a purplish-red pillar lit up. The thick pillar of light was actually 500 meters wide. The moment it had appeared, the bright sky immediately darkened. The sun seemed to have been struck into oblivion as the pillar of light rose. The huge pillar of light that was completely pearlish-red was inscribed with countless strange symbols. Most importantly, a huge dragon that was exactly the same color lay on the pillar. The terrifying pressure even caused the air to collapse and the sky to distort. The shock from the huge pillar's appearance was just too great. "That's the Demon God Emperor's Demon God pillar." Long Houchen was surprised. Did Arbao inherit the postillon of Demon God Emperor already? No, that couldn't be right. The Demon God Emperor's Demon God pillar was completely dark golden, and it was much larger than this purplish-red pillar. However, the purplish-red pillar clearly gave off the exact same aura as the Demon God Emperor's pillar. "Never did you expect this, Long Houchen." Arbao looked at his opponent in the distance coldly as the purplish-red pillar gave him unprecedented confidence. "I am the successor of the Demon God Emperor, the future Demon God Emperor of the 7th generation. Father's granted me a portion of the power from his Devil Dragon pillar. Even though what I use is only a mirror image of the Devil Dragon pillar, I can borrow a third of its power. That's more than enough to deal with you." He held the huge sword in his right hand as he extended a finger on his left hand. Immediately, purplish-red light descended from the sky from the Devil Dragon pillar, immediately landing on Arbao. The huge, purplish-red dragon on the Devil Dragon pillar seemed to become alive. It growled and snarled as it rushed towards Arbao. The dense, purplish-red color caused the surrounding air to shatter and explode. Arbao immediately gained a set of purplish-red armor on top of his natural dragon armor. The entire set of purplish-red armor seemed to be related to dragons. The helmet was a dragon with its mouth open, while the entire armor was covered with thick scales. There were two huge dragon claws on the shoulders. Purplish red light flowed about, such that the armor seemed alive. Even his purplish huge sword became covered in a layer of purplish red scales. Long Houchen did not attack Arbao as he transformed. He only watched quietly. This was only a third of the Devil Dragon Pillar's powers. If the Demon God Emperor was here instead, the power would be even more terrifying. The abilities that Arbao currently demonstrated was perfect for Long Houchen to personally experience the might of the Devil Dragon Pillar. After being surrounded in purplish red light, Arbao's presence changed. His terrifying aura directly skyrocketed as purplish red sparks flickered in his surroundings. It became a dense net of electricity. The fusion of darkness and lightning was the true powers of the Imperial clan of the Devil Dragons. As Long Houchen watched on, he pointed his sword of eternity at Arbao. Immediately, a streak of white light tore through the darkness from the Devil Dragon Pillar and landed on Arbao heavily. The light of judgment. Arbao stared at Long Houchen coldly, but he did not try to block the attack. With a great boom, white light was sent flying, but he raised his purple dragon sword of startling heaven at Long Houchen like nothing had happened at all. Milky white light shone from Long Houchen's body in that moment. It was the domain of eternity. Arbao's expression changed slightly as the white light had almost illuminated the world behind Long Houchen. The white light purged the darkness from the purplish red color on a large scale, matching the terrifying aura from the Devil Dragon Pillar. It was also in that next moment that Long Houchen and Arbao basically lunged forth at the same time. The two figures clashed at the boundary of their domains with lightning speed. Boom! In the moment the Sword of Eternity had collided with the purple dragon sword of startling heaven, the world seemed to be falling apart. The entire world immediately became dyed black and white. Huang Shuo immediately retreated into the distance. Even though the powerful assassin could appear near him at any time, he could not care anymore. Having used the power of the Devil Dragon Pillar, Arbao's strength had completely exceeded his. Coupled with the power unleashed from the Divine Throne of Eternity and Creation by Long Houchen, the explosion was just too terrifying. Neither Long Houchen nor Arbao were knocked away by that terrifying power. The purplish huge sword seemed to have become stuck to the white huge sword, while Long Houchen and Arbao remained locked together at such a close distance. The powers of darkness and light struggled against one another evenly. The domain of eternity also engaged in a full-blown clash against Arbao's Devil God domain. This was purely a clash of power. Under the complete fusion of their equipment, external spiritual energy and internal spiritual energy, they did their best to overcome the pressure from their opponent. Arbao's external spiritual energy completely surpassed Long Houchen's, but in that moment, he was the one with the warped expression. Long Houchen gripped the Sword of Eternity with both hands as he hovered there without moving. He allowed Arbao to push him as hard as possible, but Long Houchen did not press back. He only stared at Arbao with glowing eyes, allowing their domains to clash. Huang Shuo guarded himself against the assassin that could appear at any time as he watched Long Houchen and Arbao's battle. He could tell that although Arbao had invoked a part of the Devil Dragon Pillar's power, but his overall cultivation was still one step below Long Houchen's. However, for some reason, Long Houchen did not seem to be using his full power. The intense clash made Huang Shuo forget about the most important matter, which was the situation of his other Imperial guards. However, he could not be blamed. After the domain of eternity and Devil God domain had clashed, all of the spiritual energy in a range of several dozen kilometers was heavily disturbed. Even if he wanted to contact his clansmen, he would struggle, let alone the fact that an extremely powerful assassin currently lurked around him. As Long Houchen and Arbao began their battle, the Imperial Black Dragon Guard that was responsible for pursuing the bright glimmer of hope was completely mobilized as well. Out of them, the Imperial Guards that pursued Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi had it the easiest. Yang Wenjiao rode a starlight unicorn which fled into the distance with its wings unfurled. It traveled as quickly as it could. However, the starlight unicorn was still quite a lot slower than the Devil Dragons. Their distance grew closer and closer. This video will end here.